Welcome to Voices of the Ancestors, where we explore Georgian polyphonic songs
and the women who sing them.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. The voices today are Holly Taylor-Zuntz, that's me.
And me, Susan Thompson.
And our very special guest, Jen Morris, founder and musical director of 145, Seattle's Georgian singing ensemble. We're so excited to be launching our first episode at the 10th International Symposium on Traditional Polyphony. So welcome listeners if you're tuning in from the symposium online or wherever and whenever you're listening to us. This interview was recorded actually during lockdown on the 26th of June 2020. So I was at home in Oxford, UK.
And I was at home near Cambridge, UK, whilst Jen was across the pond in Seattle, USA. So, Jen and I first met on a singing tour in Georgia. It was led by a renowned musicologist, Malkaz Erkvanidze. We were in a very small village in Georgia, and it goes by one of those names that has lots of Georgian consonants all together. So I'll give it a good show. It's Bukistike. And it was a delight. And we spent the evenings being entertained by members of Sakioba and eating wonderful Georgian food and just sinking into village life. And there was a particular evening that Jen will tell you about in the podcast, where we met another extraordinary singer, Zoe Perret, who now sings with the group Camellia. But on that evening, she got to sing with members of Sakioba, and that's the ensemble that Malkaz founded.
It was so great to get to talk to Jen about how she came to Georgian song and her kind of introduction into this world, and especially how she sort of fell deeply into it and ended up creating her own ensemble 145 in Seattle.
If we carry on chatting like this, our listeners are going to know all the interview before they hear it.
Let's
I
not
think
give
we
it
should hand
away.
over to Jen.
Okay, so without further ado, here's Jen Morris. Hi Jen, welcome. It's so great to have you as a guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
How is lockdown for you? Are you singing during lockdown?
Oof. That's such a loaded question. So yes, I am singing every day in different ways, I guess, and very different than certainly what I ever imagined, how I imagined I might be singing. So there's this wonderful group that just started pretty close to the beginning of this whole pandemic experience. And so we're all people who love Georgian songs, and some of us have met together in real life, and some of us haven't, which is kind of the magic of it, right? And so we meet every day and we attempt to sing over the internet, which is, it's a challenge.
Yeah. And have you been singing with anybody in real life from a distance?
Real life, yeah. So we did. So at the very, very beginning, I sing in a Balkan women's choir called Dunava. And so in March, after being separated from each other already for 2 or 3 weeks, we decided to gather in a tree circle and stand 6 feet apart, or 2 meters for you guys. And one of the singers actually brought a measuring tape and like made sure that we were
No
at the proper
way.
distance. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And at that point, we weren't wearing masks and we weren't really thinking about aerosols and the distance and all of that. We just knew that we needed to keep keep distance. So we did that, and that was uh, nice to see each other. And there were already at that point there was one singer who said, "Oh, I don't want to do that. That'll be like licking ice cream through a window."
Ah.
Mhm.
And I thought, "Oh gosh, like I'm so desperate to sing with my friends. I haven't seen them in 2 or 3 weeks. Like if we have to stand six
Mhm.
feet apart, then and in the woods, then like I'll do it."
Like
And so
licking
that was
ice cream through a window. What an amazing way of
right,
describing singing during lockdown.
right,
Yeah, but has
yeah.
the what the singing, whether it's sort of online or from a distance, has it been some comfort to you during lockdown?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Um, so I I was already in a place where I was kind of not sure what I was doing uh when I grow up. you know, I'm
I'm
in
still
a
waiting, and I've got more grey hairs than you.
yeah, yeah. Definitely like in a transition period with my work. I'm a teacher of the deaf, and I
Mm.
left my job that the school that I worked at for 18 years. I left at the end of last school year. Um, and then there was a whole series of events that cascaded after that. I was supposed to go to Georgia in the fall. My cat was diagnosed with like terrible cancer at that
Oh
time, and
gosh.
so like that trip was canceled. And then I was supposed to try to go to Georgia again in April, and of course we all know nobody was flying or going
Mm,
anywhere in April, so it got canceled another time. So being able to do the things that I wanted to do in Georgia anyway. So meet up with fun singers from all over the world who love
Uh-huh.
Georgian songs. Like that's actually number one.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then be in Georgia together, like that would have been ideal. But of course,
Mhm.
practice Georgian language, eat Georgian food, um, but and also just sort of like sink more into the culture and the meaning behind the songs and all of that. I feel like I've been doing that, like
Mm,
Mhm.
possibly even more than being in
Mm.
Georgia, because I can meet up with new singers and also friends I already know. And there's all these offshoots, like was suddenly we're taking a language class together, and somebody's writing a paper for their PhD, and someone's doing
mm,
a podcast. And so the fact that there's so much like growth and movement out of this really
mm,
terrible worldwide thing definitely is very comforting. uh yeah, to because I mean I have to be I'm stuck at home. I have to stay here. I can't really go to the grocery store, and I mean I could, but it would be a big risk for me
mm.
personally as an immunocompromised person. So
Mhm.
if I had to stay home and I had no like social interaction and you know no projects to work on, I think
Mhm.
I'd probably just go crazy. So meeting these new people, singing songs with new friends and old, working on a language that's really quite difficult.
Yeah.
That's been it has literally saved my life.
Wow.
It's yeah,
So through that celebration of so you're not just celebrating the Georgian songs together, you're also meeting new friends, having a social life, albeit online, and
right.
you're celebrating birthdays and having all these fun games on screen and having these social interactions.
hmm
But the sort of root of that, you're all in that meeting because you love Georgian songs.
Right. Right. And it's really interesting. It sort of evolved, you know, at the beginning of it. It seemed like, okay, what can we sing together? Like that's what you do when you meet somebody that you know that you have this shared background. And so, it could be like within a half an hour of meeting and you'd say, "Oh, what songs do we know in
Mm,
common? Like what can we
Mhm.
sing?"
Mhm.
And I think that we did kind of approach it that way in the beginning. And it's really shifted into like it could have been going on for an hour,
Mhm.
and someone will show up and be like, "Have you sung any songs yet in this meeting?" And everyone's like, "Nope, nope." It's been entirely like laughing. Yeah. And
wow.
it's all like a lot of it actually is, Well, I mean, stimulating and thrilling, interesting conversation. It's not just, like fart jokes. I mean, it's actual, like, right?
Oh yeah, us
I mean,
Georgian singers were known for our fart jokes. Yeah.
well, you know what I mean, though? Like, it's not like it's continued to be fun
Mm.
for over 100 days at this point.
That's awesome.
Um, right? Because everybody has such interesting things to contribute to the conversation, I guess.
Mm. And it's a
Yeah.
surprisingly big pool of people that are involved as well. I think a lot of times when people hear about Georgian polyphonic songs, it's a niche. But it's
Right.
one of those things, once you get into the niche, it's
Yeah.
really wide.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I would say that in the beginning of my journey with Georgian singing, and uh, I did find it quite isolating, because you've like discovered this new thing and it's so exciting, and so you think, oh, I'm gonna find a Georgian Ponduri teacher in Seattle. And then you look and there just aren't any,
Ah,
or I want to find somebody who's going to teach me Kaketian ornaments. Like, I really want to learn that singing style. And well, how am I going to do that from, at the time I was in Shoreline, which is a suburb outside of Seattle. So I what I had, it took me a while to kind of make connections with local people. I made connections with local Georgians.
Uh-huh.
But none of them were folk singers. There's
mm,
one
Mm.
there's one woman, one Georgian woman who's piano teacher, and there's another, there are some people who have skills in, of course, like great cooking, Georgian cooking skills, and but there was nobody who could do that very specific thing that I was interested in learning. Um, so I guess I'm trying to connect the initial isolation of being excited about this niche thing, and then once I traveled, I mean, once like I went to Scotland for a Frank Kane workshop, and I met many of the wonderful people who are in our group now.
mm.
Um, and then I traveled to Georgia, and then I met more people, and all of that. But and that helped with the isolation as well, because I would like bring back songs and I would learn them, and then of course I would share them with singers that I knew here who had not yet been
Converted.
inducted,
So you
converted,
converted your
inoculated.
friends in order to
Yes,
sing Georgian songs with other people. You converted your singing friends into Georgian singing friends.
basically. I mean, there were a few people who had already been bitten by the bug, I guess. Maybe not quite to the same extent as me, but yeah, I was singing in a group um called Mini Finney. So we were in the Finney neighborhood community choir together, and we were singing, American shape note songs, and traditional, gospel, or South African, or I mean, uh, so many genres of
Mm,
songs, and there were a few Georgian songs buried in there in the repertoire.
mm.
But then several of us went to this camp, this Village Harmony camp in Oregon. I almost said on the Oregon coast. That's not correct. On the Mackenzie River, actually. And so we went down to this camp, and it happened that Frank Kane was there as one of the teachers, and it was a 10-day camp at that point. So we spent 10 days singing, learning, and singing these wonderful Georgian songs. And after that, I mean, I guess there were 5 or 6 of us who went from Seattle. And so after we came back from that, it was like, oh, well, we've got 10 songs. We have the basis of a repertoire. Like, we could do something with this.
So
Yeah.
was that the beginning of your 145 group?
Yeah. Yep. That's
Ah.
kind of how that all started. Yep.
And we had this
Yeah.
idea that I know I've read what you've written about 145, and it's kind of the name of it is a bit of an in-house musical joke. And it's like
Mhm.
for those people who are outside the musical joke, do you think we could sing a 145 chord and just demonstrate it?
Oh, over the internet? What?
Well,
Hmm.
it's just
Yeah,
solid
sure.
notes and a chord. So, even if there's
Sure.
with a time delay, we might manage to establish a chord.
Mm.
Yeah.
But you're the 145 leader, so you're proposing the notes.
Oh, okay. So, I would say, is that too low for you guys?
Ba, ba, ba.
I was and I still am a teacher of the deaf, so I had these skills to teach children with
Mm.
hearing loss, but not necessarily uh, adults, musical adults. Um, and so I thought, like, oh, this is not the same thing, and those are not skills that are transferable. And turns out they totally are. you you can use those skills in both areas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I discovered kind of by accident was that, I mean, I've always known that I was quite musical. I mean, when I was 3 years old, I was telling my mom, listening to the Boston Pops orchestra, like, "Mommy, I hear the violins," and so, like, it's no surprise that I'm doing something musical as an adult. But what I hadn't like really understood until about 10 years ago, and in my introduction to Georgian singing, was that I actually learn quite well by ear. So I actually am a very auditory person. One of the things that happens here, and this is more in like like a children's choir or
Mhm,
some kind of ensemble that does not sing, is not exposed to traditional Georgian folk music. One thing that can happen is that if you find it, you only find the sheet music and you don't have any of the background behind the
mhm,
song.
mhm,
Um, you are left to just kind of make your own interpretation of what you're supposed to do with this, right? And
mhm,
if you're looking at the sheet music, you wouldn't have the nuance of, like, oh, the basses are supposed to push it sharp, or
mhm.
this ornament doesn't have that like exact precise timing that you can't just really document on paper, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and then also just the transliteration issue of getting Georgian script transliterated into a script that we as Westerners can read and
Mhm.
pronounce. And so there's so many opportunities to really mess it up, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I've probably
So
taken every single one of them.
right, and yes, I definitely say that, because I mean, even now I'm learning. Like, there's a song that we sang in the Finny chorus for quite a while that it did come from someone who learned it from a Georgian, but there
Mhm,
were
mhm.
so many
Chinese
lines.
whispers.
Yes, yes, um, that were so anyway, there's definitely something lost in translation, and we ended up singing it as this very kind of like jubilant song, and it turns out that it's a mourning song. It's a song that would be sung
Oh
at
no.
someone's death, right? And but how would you know that if
Yeah.
it's not
Mm.
it's you're right, without the
Yeah,
context?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, so when
Yeah.
I am
Interesting.
either transmitting or being a conduit or whatever,
Mm.
I try to really learn the background of the song, make sure I'm pronouncing the Georgian correctly, and then I'm maintaining as much authenticity as I can,
Uh-huh.
being a non-Georgian,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
there is that obvious issue,
Yeah.
um, and you just,
Hey ho. Yeah.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I know you're aware of one of the Georgian songbooks, 99 Songs, or 99
mhm,
Georgian Songs to give it its full
yeah,
title. When
yeah.
did that pass through your life?
So I so so the original bite when I was bitten by the bug
Oh,
was
yeah.
in 2008 at this camp, and I was looking for resources, and I'm not sure if Frank Kane or maybe Carl Linick I'm not sure if someone actually told me about it. I think I may
Mhm.
have just found it
Mhm.
on the internet as like one of the only things that was available.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think I bought it online maybe around
Mhm.
2009 or so, which is, yeah, I don't, yeah. So I bought it online, and then I just kept it as like, oh, one should have this. But I didn't actually really use it for very many things. And then now coming back to it 10 years later, here I am singing with some of the people who were involved in like translating it or met Edisher or, worked with TIB singers or all of this.
Mhm.
And then they can say, like you, Susan, you can say,
Mm.
oh, I was there. I remember this workshop and I know this from Edisher, da da
Yeah.
da. And then there's even more background on the songs. But
Yeah.
I actually owned it, and I just kind of put it away because it couldn't really, because I'm not a great sight reader and I don't really
Mm.
access Georgian music mostly through sheet music. I
Mhm.
just kind of kept it on the shelf like this is a resource. And then now suddenly we've sung like almost all of those songs. And it turns
Yeah.
out I know a lot of them
Yeah.
from having been interested in Georgia music, but not from reading it in the book, from
Uh-huh.
learning it out in the world and then going, "Oh, look,
Oh.
that's the song that I already know." And then, "Oh, hey, there's a text that I didn't know was in there." And, "Oh, hey, there's other people who know these songs." So it actually has been a really great connector
Uh-huh.
between songs that I know in my head and songs that other people might have in their heads. And then we can
Yeah.
say, oh, look, it's on page 44.
Oh,
Let's
wow.
sing it. Yeah.
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 Oh,
Oh,
I would
fantastic.
so I'm going to cry. This is ridiculous. But I would so love for Edisha to be here and see where that germ of an idea got to. Because
Yeah.
yeah, I met the guy once, but I know the story, and that sort of
Yeah.
the germ of I want to create this book for Westerners, for
Yeah.
non-Georgians, so it's
Yeah.
accessible. And the idea was to have a progression of difficulty in through the book. So the first song
Hmm.
is the easiest, and the last is the hardest. And
Yeah.
and I and it was very important, is my understanding, to have the context of the songs, not and it be a way in, and it's this is not trying to be super accurate, even just
Hmm.
accessible.
Mm.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's so wonderful that Magda, Edisha's daughter-in-law, can see the
Hmm.
effect that it's having, and I'm sure that she would be really happy to know that
Hmm.
so many people around the world have this book.
These songs are so old and they're so rich, and I feel like I am rooted in the earth when I sing them. And I feel like I am, connected with not only the beings that are in our time, but that, generations before us. And I feel like that's really there in the songs that you
Hmm.
can you can feel. what life must have been like for them. You can feel that energy in the music, and you're kind of recreating it or reliving it as you're singing. So I feel like the voices of the ancestors are very present in when we sing these songs. There's definitely a richness there. Also, when I hear the word ancestors, I what was one of the biggest compliments to me was from Malkaz Erkvanidze, who I know you both know, um, when he said to me, "I think your ancestors must have been Georgian," and
Wow.
as far as I know, they aren't.
That would be a coincidence, yeah.
Yes, I mean, my ancestors actually are from England. So yeah, but but yeah, that was such a huge compliment that he said that, and there's the weight underneath behind that, like,
Oh yes.
right. We
Yeah.
don't even have to
No.
interpret it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
But
Yeah.
it reminds you mentioning Malkaz reminds me of something else we talked about previously, which was just that sharing of songs at the table that happened in
Mhm.
Georgia when we met.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
but unusually for both of us, it being a table that was entirely composed of women at the table. And I
Right.
was trying to remember after you'd mentioned it the other day, was Zoe Perret one of those people?
I don't
Because
think
she did show up,
so.
but I'm not
She
sure if
did.
she was on that night.
Yeah, she definitely, I mean, her being there at another supra that was mixed gender supra
Mm.
was a like really formative, a poignant experience for me. Because I remember hearing Dide Batwin's Shekre Basa for the first, I think possibly for the first time. And the men of Sakioba led it, and they sang one verse, and then they modulated up one note, and they sang the next verse. And then it seemed like they might stop. And then she just launched right in, and she
Mm.
very quickly said, "Will anybody be the second voice?" And she said it in Georgian, like boss, and just,
Mm.
"Is anybody going to sing second voice?" And then just launched into it, and I just thought, oh, you could be a woman at that table and you could sing like a boss and just really own it. And I want to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah. So then, of course, I call Malkaz on the phone and I say, please, can you sing those parts for me? And have this
Mm.
recording of him. I think we're even singing over Skype, and I was like holding my cell phone up to the Skype. I mean, it's this really bad recording. And then of course I passed that on to two singers in 145, and we learned it and we sang it as a trio, and it was just
Oh,
like the most
awesome.
wonderful thing.
Right.
But back to the women's supra thing, though.
Yeah.
I don't think she was there particularly, but what was remarkable about that moment was that the Georgian women of the house
Mhm.
sat down with us. And
Yeah.
that I feel like that doesn't often happen. Um It just felt like a really special moment that we could just sit down the end of the evening as women and just toast,
Mm.
and we were toasting to different things, I noticed.
Yeah.
You know, it
Different
wasn't
to the
like,
men, you mean?
yes, it wasn't like to
Yeah.
brotherhood, to being a manly man, right? There's the like katsi katsoba. Somebody always toasts to manliness, and while that is great and important, you know,
Hmm.
sometimes that's not the flavor of a toast that a woman might make if they were
Yeah.
to initiate it. Yeah. So it did feel very special to have that intimate time that was just women, and there were only like 6 or 7 of us, I think. And it did really break
Yeah.
down the barriers too between guest and host.
Mm.
And yeah, that was a special
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
That really was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
been so lovely to meet with you
Yes, thank
guys.
you so much, Jen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I should go, but
Oh, I know. We a final toast to health, I think, is required to
oh
for
yes.
all of our very good health, but particularly for your
Uh,
health, Jen, at
oh,
this
thank
time of
you.
COVID. You
Thank
talked earlier
you.
about your immune. I see. I can't speak this evening, but your
Yeah.
condition, like that.
Oh, thank you. You had to pick a word with several consonants in a cluster, right? John Murteloba.
Yes, well
John
done.
John Murteloba
Gaurmojos.
I can't manage immunosuppressant tonight, so there's no way I'm trying that one in Georgia.
No, I don't know that one in Georgian either. Yes.
I might manage a nachwamdis or a dröbit, but
Yes, we could say abakargad.
yeah,
Kargad ikavi. Be well, right?
oh, lovely.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Voices of the Ancestors with me, Susan Thompson, and Holly Taylor-Zuntz. Our guest was Jen Morris, with music from Ialoni, Sakioba, Zoe Perret, Zadashe, and Mutyebi. For more information about this and other episodes, visit voicesoftheancestors.co.uk.